Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Cruising your way on this episode of Off 90. We peek into the quiet, simple life of the Amish in Harmony. Creating beautiful art at 2,300 degrees, Lanesboro potter Sue Pariseau fires her work in one of the state's few wood kilns. And they've been a staple of Minnesota landscapes for more than 150 years. We visit some of our area's Sesquicentennial Farms. It's all just ahead, Off 90. Hi, I'm Barbara Keith. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Off 90. The Amish have been calling Harmony home since 1975, but even so, most people know little about them. They live a quiet, often secluded lifestyle, but that doesn't mean they keep exclusively to themselves. In recent years, the Amish in Harmony have opened their homes and small businesses to the general public, offering us a special glimpse into their unique way of life.
I think it's really interesting living in this area where you live next to a culture that, although the people are like the rest of us, their culture is so much different. They believe in living in the world, but not of the world. And so they try to stay separate, not dependent on the outside world. I think that's really interesting that they can make it work, because in this modern world where things are getting more technical all the time, the gap between the Amish and the rest of us is getting wider. I'm Rich Bishop with Amish Tours of Harmony. The Amish in the Harmony area are what they consider old order Amish. That means they have no electricity, no telephones. The only running water they have is cold water in the kitchen, otherwise they don't have any indoor plumbing. The Amish began coming to the Harmony area in 1974. They came from Wayne County, Ohio. The land prices in Ohio were getting quite high, and they were being crowded out by urbanization, and their community was growing, so they wanted land that was similar to where they came from. Young children, when they first start school, usually do not speak any English. They speak German at home as their first language. So when they start school, they are taught both to read and write in both German and in English. So for that reason, they call everyone else English, because we speak English. So if you're not Amish, you're English. Amish first came to the Harmony area, almost all of them were farmers. Today, fewer and fewer are farming, and a large part of that is due to Minnesota no longer accepts grade B milk. Our stop up here is a family that he makes furniture. He makes some really nice things. They sell directly off the farm here. Countryside Furniture is the name of his business.
when you hear Amish furniture, you associate that with quality. You know, it's definitely built with real wood. It's a higher grade of furniture. I have about a 40-horse diesel engine, and there's a shaft that runs through the shop under the floor. Then just with belts and pulleys, I have to figure out each machine has to run at a certain speed. So my engine will run around 2,000 RPM, and then I have to figure out from there what size pulleys I want to use. And at first I thought it would be quite a challenge, but once you get started on it and know the formula, how to figure it out, it's fairly easy from there.
They do use stationary gas and diesel engines for running stationary machinery like stationary hay balers or pumping water or running woodworking equipment. They do not use any motorized equipment out on their fields though. They will strictly use horses.
The reason they come here for furniture is because they can meet the guy that actually builds it. They're not used to our lifestyle, and they enjoy coming to the builder and getting to know me. I'm used to people asking me questions on how we live, and I can see why. They're always wondering, and I guess we don't advertise too much the way we live. It's getting to be quite a bit out there anymore. The more information you have on us, or the more it's out there, the less unique we will be. My grandparents were one of the first people to move out here. They maybe moved in 75. I'm not quite sure, was it 74 or 75? And then my parents decided we're gonna move out here too from Ohio, and that was in 85 then. It was a nice area, I guess, for farming. That was the main reason why they settled into this area. The first people that came around here, you know, that were out looking for a place to move to, stopped here because they thought this would be a good place for us to farm. I grew up Amish, and for somebody that never was Amish and goes Amish, I have no way of telling you what that guy would have to go through. And there's no way I will ever be able to. But I imagine it would be pretty tough. You know, as far as the simple things, as far for you having a bathroom in the house, that would definitely be a big change. And not having a phone or electric, or as far as if he'd want to use the microwave, there is no way to quickly heat up a cup of coffee. Unless you got hot water and the stove going, you can do it. There's also a lot of things that I don't envy you guys for what you have on a lot of things, I guess. We do have our hectic. It seems hectic for us too, but you guys have another level on that one on us. But you are people just like we are. We're all humans, and the older I get, the more I realize it.
Pottery is one of the world's oldest art forms, and one Lanesboro artist is bringing the craft back to its roots. Sue Pariseau finishes her work by heating the pieces in a wood-fired kiln instead of an electric model. It's a process that takes an entire week to complete, but the end results are natural, earthy, and simply stunning.
Each piece is kind of, I'll say, kissed by the fire. It has some little spot on it that the fire has touched, or that ash from the wood has landed on it and melted and created a little spot that you'll never achieve again in another pot. And so each pot is very unique. Hi, my name's Sue Pariseau and I operate Sue Pariseau Pottery. I would say that there are probably somewhere between 20 to 30 wood-fired kilns in the state of Minnesota. I think that it is a fairly unique way of doing pottery. There's several different ways that pottery is fired. The primary ways that they're fired in other places are with an electric kiln. There's not a lot of action in the kiln. It's really just electric elements making it hot and then cooling down. So you can get some very nice bright colors, but there's not a lot of variation and difference in them. The kiln that I have, we stoke wood in, and because of that, you have some nice, really colorful things, yet things that have this earth tone. And you can't achieve that in either the gas or the electric kiln. My process starts really here in the studio with making and throwing things. I take the balls of clay and I use the wheel for the most part. I do a little bit of hand building stuff, but most of it is wheel thrown. From that point on, then I glaze them. I have a variety of glazes that I use. Shake it all off and see if there's any places that didn't get covered. And then I store them until I have enough of them made, because the kiln takes anywhere from 125 to 150 pieces. And once I have enough to do a firing, we kind of stack them all in the kiln. I think I have room for like one more. I do feel a connection to the earth because of the way that my pottery is made. Using the wood and using the dirt, and it just all kind of combines to make these really earthy looking pots. I describe my pottery as functional pottery, and because of that, it's very meant to be used. There's lots of potters that do things that aren't really meant to be used. They're decorative pieces, and it's really important to me that my pieces are made to be used and that people do use them. After we've put all the pottery in, we have to, what I call, brick up the door. The door right now is a big opening when you're putting the pottery in there, and to keep all the heat in, you actually need to stack bricks to create that door. So it's kind of just one by one, stacking bricks in that door opening to block it and keep the heat in. After we brick up the door, we kind of put this mud and newspaper mixture over it to try and seal it up a little bit tighter. We usually fire the kiln for 24 hours, and Once it gets to a certain temperature, usually around 2300 degrees, then we close it all up. We usually wait almost a full week, so it takes that long for it to cool down. Want to peek in? Peeking in is the best part. To me, taking the pots out of the kiln is like Christmas. You never know what you're going to get from a pot. Each pot is different, and you don't know what the kiln's going to do to it while it's in there. And some of them, they come out and they're just gorgeous, and oh my God, look at this, look at this. It turned out so gorgeous. And some of them don't, and some of them are the ones that you had the highest expectations of, and when you take them out, that didn't do what I hoped it was going to be. But then there's, 2 more that are just so gorgeous. You weren't expecting that, but it turned out so wonderful. I think that there is a piece of me in every pot that comes out of there, whether it's just the care that I've given to how I made it and trimmed it and took care of it till it gets there, or kind of how I decorated it, how I glazed it, and the work that gets put into it. And sometimes I think people don't necessarily realize kind of the work that goes into a piece of pottery or any piece of handmade work, that they don't necessarily realize that we're not, the little thing that you saw at the department store, that kind of thing. There's more work put into it, and I hope that they realize the effort that an artist goes through to make things like that.
Minnesota became a state in 1858, and people have been farming the land here for just as long. In this segment, we celebrate a few of southeastern Minnesota's Sesquicentennial Farms. These farms have been in the same family for more than 150 years. Find out how these Minnesotans are keeping our state's agricultural legacy alive.
Well, the people that were here back in the 1850s, they were wonderful pioneers that really got us on a good start, and it's very impressive to see what has happened around here over the 150 years.
I guess it's got the roots. I mean, it's something that go back and say, grandparents have been here, also my great-grandparents, but it's my great-great-grandfather that homesteaded here. I guess you have to look at a long term. If you look at short term, I want to make as much money as I can right now. It might hurt the land and everything, but if you look long term, we have to save the soil, and maybe the profits won't be quite as much, but we can live with that. Come on, cows. Once you get a good piece of ground, it's nice to hold on to it and keep it in the family if you can. Actually, when he came from New York State, my great-great-grandfather homesteaded near Rochester, and you're supposed to get a house built within a year, and he didn't do that, and so somebody jumped his claim. So then he came out here and homesteaded, and then he got his house built right away. Well, there was marriages and births and deaths and illnesses, all inside the house, and it was very true. My aunt got married there, my dad passed away in that house, and so it's seen a lot of different, things over the years. The grandpa and grandma lived there. The school teacher had a room because the schoolhouse was only about 1/8 of a mile away, and then they had hired men and everything. So at the time, they went from a log cabin to a great big house. So it was quite a big change. The trees that we're standing in, it was really old trees and everything, and Dad took and bulldozed them all down, put new trees. So when I was a kid, the trees were only about this big. And now just think, you know, what we have for a windbreak now. It's a beautiful windbreak. One thing about land is you really learn different wet places where tractors got stuck and stuff like that. Some of those things are transferred over the years, the stories and stuff like that. Up on the east farm here, we used to have corn and alfalfa strips, but now we raise more beans, less hay. It's a little bit more work, contour strip farming, but it's well worth it because you don't have as much erosion, and that's what is most important in farming, is trying to keep your topsoil in place. We'll have to see if Matthew wants to farm. He's really interested in the computers and different things like that, so I think you shouldn't really force another person, you know, force it on to them. It's great if they decide this is something that you really want to do. That's what's really important, is do what you want to do. I see different farmers, and there's about 1,000 different ways you farm, but everybody determines what they think is the right way, and then they do really well. But if they're forced into farming a certain way, you know, it's not going to work.
It's the 6th generation, and the pressure's on, so I hope he becomes a farmer.
We are in Wilson Township, Winona County, and we are on the farm that was established by my great-great-great-grandfather in April of 1856. This gentleman is just short of 80 years old. He sells his assets in New Hampshire, and with his daughter and her husband and 3 little kids in tow, they head west. They go to the Ohio River and float downstream to St. Louis, get on a steamboat, and apparently in search of a new property, they landed at Winona, Minnesota, and in April of 1856, this 80-year-old man purchased this property from an Indian gentleman named Pierre Chowchenny for the sum of $1,100. So that would mean that this farm has been in my family for 156 years.
There's a lot of, deep history here, and a lot of things that, that we're proud that we're here. We were established here in 1854, and it's my father's side. So there was a father and a son that settled here to begin with. It was Hiram and Philander. And then Philander had some sons, and one of them's name was Sears. And then Sears married Lily Fogelsong. And then my father was born. There was 6 children in that family. He passed away in 2003. And I'm the last one, the youngest one. I married Jean. She was Jean Manahan from Chatfield. And so Colin will be 6th generation here. He's kind of starting to buy into the farm and buying some machinery, and plus he helps me farm also. When I'm out in the field, I just, feel good about being out there working the soil, and know that someday my son or even possibly my daughter will come back and farm this land, and their kids, I would hope, and we're feeding people several times more than us, and hundreds of people that we're raising food for. that's what we do. We love our farm and we love our background, we love our agriculture, and we talk about it and we promote it.
You know, it's an honor. I feel blessed by, being able to stay here.
There aren't many farms that have been in the same family for 150 plus years.
History is like the rudder on a boat. It's always behind you, but it's guiding where you're going. And I think it's very important that people realize where they've come from as they are looking to the future. And in this more modern age where there are people that don't understand where their food comes from, then places that can educate people and show people where it really came from and comes from to this day is very important.
That's all for this episode. See you next time. Off 90.
Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.